Guys, thanks for tuning in to the Alliance Guys podcast. I'm your host, Jay Cal, and with me as always, the former world junior heavyweight champion, the modern day hero, the man with the plan, Mr.
Hey.
Kevin Douglas. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, man? Pretty excited to be here.
So for about 10 years now, we've been talking NWA, hashtag talk NWA. We live it, we breathe it. Kevin Douglas, you used to come on the show with us and talk NWA. Now you're a part of the show talking NWA. And, you know, we're just a mere 3 days. Wait, 3 days? We're just a few days away from the
3 days
from the NWA Pay Per View. Now, this is the, I believe, 5th pay per view. Let's count it out real quick, right? So the first NWA pay per view was the 70th anniversary show, and that was followed up by the Crockett Cup, and then they did the New Year's Clash earlier this year. This will be the 4th pay per view, unless I'm missing one. Crockett Cup, 70th anniversary.
Well, then they had the big one right before the 70th anniversary, but I don't know if that was pay per view.
Are you talking about All In?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's technically NWA was involved, and I am one of those guys that do kind of count that as, you know, at least partial credit. But yeah, okay. So let's just say five pay-per-views, and this is the first pay-per-view following an episodic television. Now, for 9 weeks, a lot of the wrestling world have been tuning in at 6:05 Eastern, 3:05 Pacific on YouTube, not TBS, and we're watching the NWA Power every Tuesday. And that show has been the first time there's been, like I said, episodic television building up to this pay-per-view. And I have to say, Kevin, I've been very happy with what the NWA has done, what they're continuing to do. Now, I do have my complaints. Do not get me wrong. I do have my complaints, but I think all in all, the show has been really good. Kevin, what have you thought about NWA Power in the first season, the first 9 episodes?
I've really enjoyed, if I were to like give it rankings on some of what I would consider like the essentials of a show, I think their production value for where they are, it's as good as anybody. I really think the show as it comes across on YouTube is very clear. It just looks great. And again, I'm pretty familiar with Mr. Marquez, and you know, he always produces a very good show. And so kudos to him. The NWA is very lucky to have a guy like him around. I definitely think the in-ring action is good. It's not great, but it's good. The storytelling has been surprisingly better than I could have expected. And so, I really have to give my hats off. If I were to say anything that they're doing that other wrestling leagues aren't doing, of course, the throwback style is one thing, but the other thing is that, you know, they really are trying to tell some stories, and they do make you think, and you kind of don't know what's coming next. And part of me thinks it's just they take what they've got and they just kind of run with it. But another part of me thinks that it is strategic. And I want to give them credit where credit is due. So again, I think the stories are good. The matches, I think the stories are really good. I think the matches are pretty good, and I think the production value for where they're at right now is way above average. Definitely very good, if not great.
I think anybody who's producing the show would love to hear those kind of comments, especially coming from a man like yourself who not only it watches wrestling, it's been such a big part of your life, but you've also been on the other side of the camera. You've been inside the ring. You've been the focus of the attention. You were represented the NWA very well as junior heavyweight champion, not only in Hollywood, but we also know you had defenses up in the Northeast that were televised, defenses in, I believe you wrestled in Tennessee for NWA Smoky Mountain. It's now something else. Did you also wrestle in NWA Mountain State, or am I misremembering?
Yes, I did. State. Yes, I wrestled in Mountain State as well. I had a good little 3-day run with Chase Owens out there. It was awesome.
And people seem to forget or just weren't involved with the NWA then. But those were your 4 major places that had television: NWA Hollywood in California, Smoky Mountain in Tennessee, Mountain State in West Virginia, and then you competed at a Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators event, but it was filmed for NWA on Fire. So as champion, you ran the gamut. You just defended that title in the 4 televised markets of the NWA at the time. So you're familiar with what it takes to be inside that ring on TV. Tell me about the talents in the NWA Power, the Georgia Broadcasting Studios.
Mm-hmm.
What wrestlers have you seen that you've been blown away by, and what's the word I'm looking for? What is the best way to describe what they're doing in the ring?
Well, I'm kind of running through who's on the pay-per-view right now. And
right.
I'm gonna have to put my top guy would be Eli Drake.
Okay.
I think about as complete as you could ask for.
And you shared. Let me interrupt real quick. You shared the ring with Eli Drake on countless occasions. I remember specifically a red carpet rumble back in Anaheim, California, where you were in that ring with Mr. Drake. And is he as tough as we all think he is?
Man, I 100%. Again, I think whenever you're in there with a guy that is truly on another level, it brings your game up. And so with him, you can definitely feel the electricity in the ring when he's there. There's a certain sense of importance that, hey, this is a big deal because I'm in here with this guy. He definitely carried that about him. But again, I think as far as just, relevance to where he is in his career, his in-ring ability, his microphone skills, the way he looks, the intrigue, you want to watch him, you want to see him, you want to know what he's going to say next. I have to put him at the top of the ladder as far as what I think of their talent.
Okay.
I would have to, my second person after that would have to, and this is a tough one because I wasn't a big Nick Aldis fan coming in. But really he just recently watching that face-to-face interview that he had with James Storm, he won me over. And so I'm actually going to bump him over Colt Cabana as my second best guy, just because he's won me over. I mean, promos are good. I think in the ring he leaves a little bit to be desired, but as far as the way he looks like a champion, he carries himself like a champion. He talks on a microphone like a champion. I just think again, like his in-ring stuff could be a little better, but as a whole, I think he's proved to me over the last few months why he's the champion. Third would probably be Colt Cabana. It's just, to me, he's over my career. I've watched Colt probably for over a decade, been in plenty of shows and been around him plenty of times and never had the chance to wrestle him, at least not that I can remember. But I've always admired what he does, and I think he's extremely underrated talent. I'm gonna make a shocker with my next one. It's probably just because it's a personal preference, but I'm gonna probably throw Ricky Starks in there right after that. His promo skills, the way he looks, where he is at his career, he's easy to take seriously, and he's one of those guys where I just think sometimes you think a guy has to kind of be there longer and pay their dues, and I'm all about that. But I also think when the iron's hot, you got to strike while the iron is hot. And I think he's one of those guys that his time is now, and it's a good time to actually take advantage of the opportunity. As far as to round up my top 5, I'm going to have to say Trevor Murdoch would be my number 5 person. And the reason I'm not ranking him higher is just because sometimes, especially when you're in a position like his, you have to hard negotiate for certain things. And I just think the match between him and Nick Aldis was too soon for what it was. And I think the outcome on his behalf, again, as a wrestler, where I'm kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit, but there's a time to say no. And I think it was a little soon for him. So I'd probably put him higher had I not had to watch him lose to Nick Aldis, again, for no real apparent reason. I'm going to go with my honorable mention would probably be Thunder Rosa as far as the top female wrestler
Sure.
in the National Wrestling Alliance. And then it's a tie for my most overrated.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, my most overrated, and it's not Aaron Stevens. Actually, I think he's pretty good. My most overrated is going to be a tie between James Storm and definitely James Storm and Ken Anderson. Those two guys, I know why they're there. I know what they're there for. They're there to pull fans and draw them and get people to watch because of their household names. But I'm just not excited about seeing them. I'd much rather see Nick Aldis go up against a guy, like a Colt Cabana, an Eli Drake. Gosh, even pull the one guy from the tag teams, Thomas Latimer. Pull him out of that tag team and put him in the picture. To me, these guys are just more relevant, more believable. I just not a big fan of those two guys. I think they're both very overrated, but I'm still glad they're there.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what goes on backstage. People always tell me kayfabe is dead, and I say you don't know what goes on. The wrestlers all in the locker rooms don't know what's going on behind the scenes, so you can't tell me that too about what's going on. So kayfabe is not dead. I am excited too about Stu Bennett and to see where they're going to go with him.
Now let me run down my diamonds in the rough since you went to your MVPs, because I think there's a lot of unrealized potential in the NWA Power show. And I'm going to start off with number one, the guy that everybody's sleeping on, who I think could be a star. And I'm going to say it right now, Caleb Conley. The dude's been with the NWA for decades. I mean, You said it yourself. He was there at the junior heavyweight title tournament. He was even there at NWA in Charlotte. And I think that predated the Revival tournament. He was there. He's been wrestling with the NWA consistently, even as part of this the new regime of the National Wrestling Alliance, if you will. And I really think that this is his time, much like Ricky Starks. I think if Caleb Conley gets a few more matches and gets some momentum going, I think he could be really special for the NWA. So he's number one on my list. Number two on my list, you said Thunder Rosa. It's hard to say that she's underrated. It's hard to say that she's not getting her due, but I really think that her ceiling is so high that I really think the NWA, I don't even think they know what they have in her right now. And I think the sky's the limit with her. If they end up putting that women's championship on her at some point, that is going to make a lot of noise for the National Wrestling Alliance. And that's not, and I will say, be the first to admit, I actually enjoy Allison Kay. I'm not trying to knock her, but I really think Thunder Rosa has got that next level stuff. And I'm excited to see what she has. Then you said Aaron Stevens. Now I came out on the first night he was there, and I'm like, this guy, what a joke. Send his bags packing. Let him go back to the Impact Arena or the WWE. He doesn't belong here. But I kind of have to eat those words, Kev, because he came out there and he cut these promos, and I said, "Oh, geez, man, he's sitting there doing stuff goofy. Don't look me in the eye. I'm an actor, Shakespeare." And I'm just over it. But the more I watch it, the more I'm getting my blood boiling, and the more I'm getting that heat going. And you know what? This guy's doing his job. It's and I don't, I've heard people use the term X-Pac heat. Oh, you don't want him to go away. You want to turn off the TV. If that guy can get you to turn off your TV on a program that you enjoy, he's doing his job. and Aaron Stevens is that guy to me. I'm not going to turn off my TV because I know he's going to do something stupid and it's going to make me laugh. But he's going to get me angry in the process. And, the old philosophical question, if there are no villains, are there any heroes?
That's true.
And you need to have that villain to have a good hero. Now, right now, he's kind of been in this feud with Ricky Starks, and it's been enjoyable. I think both parties would benefit from moving on from it. But, I wouldn't be surprised if this Saturday, instead of your guy, Ricky Starks, walking out as the new national champion, what if we see Aaron Stevens walks out? as that national champion. I'm just saying it could happen.
It totally could happen. I also forgot to mention, who I feel like are the biggest underdogs of the NWA, because they're the absolute worst wrestlers in the company, and big props to them for being such underdogs and overcoming such amazing odds. That has to go to the Rock and Roll Express. Way to go, guys.
Soft applause. Man, that's a big bird. Lagana's not going to come on my podcast anymore.
Oh man, just tell him it's all in good fun.
Sure. I'm not going to lie to the guy. So moving forward, so you kind of gave us who you're enjoying the most in the NWA. I'm telling you who I think has the most unrealized potential. I left out one important name on that list, and I can't believe I did it. Eddie Kingston.
Oh, yeah.
Former Ring of Honor world champion Eddie Kingston. Now this guy, I get why they put him in a tag team with Homicide. I get it. But I almost feel like that might be a disservice to his abilities. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to break up any tag teams, because obviously the NWA needs as many tag teams as they can get. But I think Kingston on a solo run, gunning after Colt, gunning after Ricky Starks, gunning after Aaron Stevens, whoever walks out with that national title, I think you've got a good program right there.
I can't disagree. I really think he is a good promo guy. And I like that you're talking about him in the national title picture. Maybe not your banner carrier, but definitely a guy that could give any of the champions any of those guys you mentioned a good program. Just as long as he's in the right spot on the card, it's hard to complain about somebody that's good. It's just when you have certain guys, no names mentioned, higher than they should be in terms of where they really are.
So then because we're talking NWA right now, we're just free flowing. So Kevin, again, you know what it takes to be a champion because you've done it. When you look at that roster, you look at the men in that ring, you look at Nick Aldis, he is our standard bearer, whether you like him or not, he is the guy, and a very wise world champion once said, to be the man, you have to beat the man. Mm-hmm. Who do you see on this roster currently, as it is, playing within the rules of the public broadcasting studios in Georgia? Who do you see in that arena that could take the title from Nick Aldis? Is it Eli Drake?
At this point, why this is the match everyone wants to see.
I agree.
I understand to some extent that back in the day, you sold tickets by not giving the fans what they really truly wanted every time. But this is not back in the day. And at some point you have to do what, the greatest wrestling company in the history of wrestling companies does. And that is give people what they want at some point. I might be quoting one of those guys, give me what I want. By the way, I just love Batista. I don't know what it is about the guy, but one of the nicest, probably the nicest famous quote unquote wrestler I ever got to interact with and meet, and he just cracks me up. I was just a big fan of his on and off the mat. But
all right, wait. Yeah. You can't bring up Batista and not talk about how he's thirst tweeting over at Dana Brooks, and she's responding. It's like the hottest angle in wrestling, and it's not even in the ring. It's a Twitter a blooming relationship, if you will. I think that's probably the hottest angle in all of wrestling right now. And,
I didn't know that I was the only one following that. I thought I was the only one following that.
When I saw her reply, I popped in my house. I'm sitting there and I'm on my phone going through Twitter like, oh, wow, she replied. Their children are going to save wrestling, Kevin. That's what it is. Their children are going to save wrestling.
And bodybuilding and movies.
Right, and movies. They'll be in the next Avengers movie.
Well, or you might be looking at the next Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
That's where that's kind of where he comes from. Kids that come out of royalty that are raised right tend to do pretty good.
Yeah. No wonder, huh? No kidding. But let's get back to the question at hand. So you think Eli Drake is the guy
Yeah,
in
no
that
doubt.
on that roster right now.
Not even close. Not even close. Right now, it's not even close. I would love to hear if you've got somebody else. I'd like to hear who and why.
You know, I'll be honest. One of the things that I've said about this roster since day one is I like the roster, but it's not a very deep roster.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Colt Cabana on a good day could beat Nick Aldis. I do.
Yeah.
I also think that on a good day, Trevor Murdoch could beat Nick Aldis. And I genuinely believe that. But I know on Nick Aldis's best day, he's a hard guy to beat. I flew all the way to China to see Colt Cabana lose to Nick Aldis.
Wow.
I was in Hollywood when Nick Aldis defeated Bad Dude Tito. I don't know if you remember Tito. Of course you remember Tito.
Of course I do.
He was tough then. He's even tougher now. And I really dig that match. I really think if you guys watching this right now, go pour over the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood archives and see if you can find that match, because that was a very good match. But with that being said, in that world, in that diminutive world, it's not very big. It's 14 guys.
Yeah.
And I don't. You're right. I think maybe Eli Drake is the only guy that on his best day, Nick Aldis's best day, man. Yeah. I think I'm still thinking Drake comes away with that belt.
I can't, and I agree with you. I think it's been, Eli Drake. I believe, Sean Ricker was his name when I was doing television for Marquez in Hollywood.
Right.
At the time, it was NWA Hollywood, and I was there for the transition over to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Right.
And big thanks to Dave Marquez for making me look better on TV than anybody ever has. But I at that time was sitting there going, look, he's the only guy that I think is even in Adam Pearce's, hemisphere. And that was, that was 2012 and 2011. And here we are now, 2019 going into 2020. And, Eli Drake is still having to roundabout for a title shot. And I kind of look at these guys. I'm looking at the producers and everything, and I'm just going, look, if you want people to watch, if you want good talent, and this is real. I mean, we're dealing with this as Rangers fans here. Is even though I'm not in Texas anymore, I'm still a Rangers fan, and we deal with it here. But if you don't treat top talent well, they're not coming.
Right.
And you have a guy like Eli Drake that really and truly should be in the title picture and should have been in the title picture already. And you have this big pay-per-view coming up, the culmination of their television show. And honestly, it should be James Storm and Kennedy in the Hokey Doke match, and you should have Eli Drake versus Nick Aldis. I mean, that's what I would. Again, what do I know? I'm not a TV producer, but as someone sitting back wanting to watch as a former wrestler and as a current, I would consider myself a connoisseur of fans. I just think that's the match we want to see, and that's the match we need to see. Let's go ahead and end this James Storm program and move on to something that's going to really intrigue people. Let's see these guys fight 5 or 6 times on the big stage over a span of a year.
Let me add 2 more points to that before we move on. Number one, you were in that Glendale Studios arena when Eli Drake, Sean Ricker did challenge Pierce for that title. And I know if you were like me, if you were able to see it in the back on the cameras, there were a couple of times that I didn't think Pierce was going to get his shoulder up in time for that 3 count. Drake looked really good then. He looks even better now.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I'm kind of a name dropper, but sometimes I have to hold myself in reserve. And I just know that recently when talking to a former world champion, they were hoping that the NWA would choose to give Eli Drake an opportunity to challenge for that World's Heavyweight Championship. I'm not going to say which champion said it. I'm not going to divulge any information, but just know that you're not alone in your thought process.
Well, he wouldn't happen to have a bald head, would he?
I'm not at liberty to discuss this.
Awesome. Well, I think we're both in agreement. I think he easily should be the next guy up in terms of after this pay-per-view. So I thought about something fun. I don't know if you had planned this or not, but I'm a big predictions guy. Me and Bull and our buddy Jamie are always making predictions about sports, and I'm always making people predict their favorite who's going to win the college football playoffs, who's going to win this and that. So are you up for some predictions on this pay-per-view? Who you got?
Absolutely, and that just means I have to get this show done before Saturday. So you're putting the fire under me, and I like it.
Let's do it.
All right. So then, I don't have a match order in front of me, but you're planning stuff without me, and I definitely appreciate it. So let's hear it. Let's go.
So I think the first match on the ticker is going to be the Rock and Roll Express versus the Wild Cards. And so I'm gonna go out on a limb and go with the Wild Cards because that's just what should happen.
I'm gonna agree with you on this one. I think we see eye to eye. The Rock and Roll Express. You said something earlier about hot shotting a title. I think this was very much a hot shot. It got people talking about the NWA. Maybe they didn't know how big or how. I talked to Lagana last week. The podcast is up. You can listen to it if you follow this link right here. He even said that, they did this show in a void, in a vacuum. They didn't know how the fans were going to respond to it when they started plotting it all out. Then when they get in front of the audience, they still didn't know how the grand consumer was going to enjoy the show. They had an idea because the crowd in Atlanta reacted in certain ways, but they didn't know the response they were going to get on YouTube, with the first episode getting over 500,000 views, the second episode and most episodes afterwards, around that 250 to 300,000 viewership. So with that being said, doing something to get people talking about your product is definitely believable. And I should have asked Lagana that, but that they got the pop they needed for the Rock and Roll Express. Rock and Roll Express are not a full-time tag team. The Wild Card are, in my opinion, a terrific tag team. Mm-hmm. I really like Royce Isaacs. I've seen a lot of him in Hollywood. Thomas Latimer, he used to be known as Bram in Impact. He's a very talented individual. I think as a tag team, they shocked a lot of people at the Crockett Cup. And I think right now I don't see a tag team better than them in the NWA. So I'm with you. Let's go with let's see the Wild Card regain those tag titles.
And I think the second matchup is the three-way of Aaron Stevens, Ricky Starks, and Colt Cabana. I don't think it should even be. I think you can guess who I'm going for.
Right.
Ricky Starks. That's my man.
Of course.
So I'm pulling for Pretty Ricky to come through on that one.
And I'm gonna go polar opposite, just like we were alluding to earlier. I'm gonna say Aaron Stevens should win that title. And I know why Ricky Starks should win. And I know why Colt Cabana should retain. But let me tell you why Aaron Stevens should win. Because I think for every good title division, for every good champion, the chase is what sells it. When Sting was chasing Ric Flair for that World Heavyweight Championship, when Rick Steamboat was chasing Ric Flair for that World Heavyweight Championship, that's what it was about, man. It was about that chase. I remember specifically, and this is a funny story, because growing up, I always thought my mom just liked letting don't choke to death, Kev. I need you.
It's not. We're good. We're good. Carry on.
Okay. Growing up, we used to get the NWA pay-per-views, and I always thought my mom's was just being kind because she knew her two boys loved wrestling, and we got every single pay-per-view. And I remember it was Sting versus Flair, and the Horsemen run out, and my mom lets out the biggest son of a bitch, and I shocked, and my mom goes, "I can't believe that a-hole Ric Flair and those four Horsemen, we're never getting an NWA pay-per-view again." And me and my brother look at each other and we sigh, because we love the NWA. I mean, we love the WWF pay-per-views as well. WWF pay-per-view comes on the following week or 2 weeks or a month, and then next thing you know, it's, hey, Lex Luger's got a shot at the world's heavyweight champion, and when it's Ric Flair versus Lex Luger. Hey, Mom, can we get this pay-per-view? Yeah, but those dirty Horsemen better not get involved. And of course, she'd be letting out an expletive later because the Horsemen would be involved. And to me, I think when you've got a good heel, that's important. I think I think in a world where we live in today, where wrestling, there's so many gray areas.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing gray about Aaron Stevens. He's a heel.
Yeah.
He's somebody you could hate. He could cheat to win, and the fans can boo him. And I don't know, man. I love Cole. All three of these guys I really enjoy, but for my pick is Aaron Stevens. Now, I know you love Ricky Starks, so why don't you tell me why Ricky Starks should win this title?
Well, I think it's 2019. I think there are a few wrestlers that you're looking at on this roster that are right now guys, meaning their time wasn't 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 100 years ago, Rock and Roll Express. Their time is now. They
Right.
are the guy right now. Who else would you I'm always seeing who's the WWE going to try to pluck out of this group? Who are they going to try to pay to come over to and Ricky Starks actually has done some work with the NXT before. And so I just think he's if you're trying to be relevant, you're trying to be a now company, you need to have some people getting a push that are guys that would be relevant even if they were on any other wrestling league. And so again, I'm not a big, I'm not a guy that likes giving away charity belts or charity wins just because somebody has a name. I believe those guys should be using that name to help bring light to the guys that are the now guys, not the has-beens, or even not the ones that might become someday. I think Ricky Starks, along with Eli Drake, are the now guys of Nick Aldis. I think these guys are the now guys of the National Wrestling Alliance, and I think the National Wrestling Alliance should take notice of that. But if you want that's who I want to win. But if you want my real prediction, I think Colt's going to come out with it. But I think it'd be a shame if Ricky's not the guy holding that alligator belt with the gold United States on it.
His pleasure is leather, but he's sold on gold.
I was trying to remember what he said. And if you guys need to go onto Ricky's Twitter and watch his ridiculous videos on there, they're outstanding, hilarious, awesome. Just again, I love what he's doing right now. And actually, before I left Texas, I talked to Ricky for just a few minutes. I got to sing the national anthem at one of Houston Carson's show where Lance Hoyt was on the show and Ricky was on the show, a few other guys. And I remember Ricky talking about doing stuff like that, just saying, I've been putting these videos out. I've been hiring these people to help me do production. He's really working hard. He's really working hard at this, trying to make himself stand apart. And again, I think his promos, his body, his in-ring ability, all that, I really think he's putting the effort in. I just think that you should see some fruit from it.
Let me say one last thing about Ricky Starks, just to that point. And for anyone who's listening that's a wrestler and wants to get to that next level, I know for a fact Lagana wanted to work with Ricky Starks based on these video vignettes that he put out. Mm-hmm. It's all about the do-it-yourself type mentality and getting yourself over. Ricky Starks has a knack for that, and that's what got him landed in the NWA. But let's continue on. What else you got for me?
Well, the next match I think we're both going to agree. We've got Ken Anderson, Eli Drake. It's Eli Drake for me, and drop the mic. There's not even anything to talk about. Ken Anderson's been done.
I think this angle, they needed something for Eli Drake to do. Mm-hmm. Simple. Ken Anderson is a good wrestler. Well, Ken Anderson was a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? He could wrestle. He's not somebody who is garbage. He's not trash. He was a nice enough guy. He's good enough on a promo. His time has come. Mm-hmm. And I think he knows that, and I think that's why he's here. I think this match is going to serve a purpose to just put another noticeable win for Eli Drake. Give him that next level up. Disappointed that Ken Anderson wasn't used better leading up to this show. Like, honestly, neither one of these guys have had a lot of matches leading up to this pay-per-view. In fact, maybe this match shouldn't even be on pay-per-view, except for it gets Eli Drake's name on the card.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm gonna go with the fact that there was probably some form of agreement for more about Ken Anderson's namesake than his actual wrestling ability for the show. And if his asking price was too high for a wrestling match, and all it is just to get his name out there so Eli can beat him, good for the producers for doing that, because I don't really like seeing him wrestle anyways.
See, and okay, sidebar, fantasy booking, right?
Yeah.
I kind of thought that putting Trevor Murdoch and Ken Anderson as a tag team would be interesting.
Sure, or actually Trevor Murdoch and Ken Anderson in a match would be good too. But I like the tag team idea mainly because it actually puts two strengths together. Murdoch's in-ring ability is, I mean, absolutely awesome. By the way, I think your Angels just got Anthony Rendon. So congratulations.
Well, we missed out on Cole, so that was kind of heartbreaking.
Well, I think everybody knew who Cole was going to in there. If you want to be honest with yourself, but back to Murdoch and Anderson, I think Anderson has some decent microphone skills. I can't say they're good, but they're decent. And again, Murdoch, not much on the mic, but certainly a workhorse in the ring. So it's not it wouldn't be a bad deal. And on that segue, it's not the next match on the card, but we might as well talk about Murdoch and question mark, which actually before we get into that, you said there's no gray area with Aaron Stevens, but there's a lot of gray area in the space between him and question mark.
Oh, for sure. It's one of the remarkable things about doing this show that Lagana and even Billy Corgan addressed the crowd that night. Like, we had no idea that this guy was going to get over as much as he did. There was a camera malfunction during the show on the second night, and they were stalling. And one of the things they did was they just sent out the question mark, who literally went up and down the aisles shouting karate and doing the hook 'em horn sign. And it was just the most surreal thing that I'd ever seen. And I remarked to some of my friends that were there that, someone should just run to the nearest, Sears or Kmart and go get a couple of black Sharpies and just put a couple of question marks on them and sell them for $10 outside the door with Mr. Question mark over here. You'll make $1 million doing that, because it was so over with that crowd, like ridiculously over. I don't think they had any idea that the fans in Atlanta would take to that silly gimmick the way they did. And it's really been kind of strange, because I thought that was an anomaly just for that crowd, just for that audience. But it's been infectious, man. And the people who I see on Twitter or watch the show with during the live segment, they have that live chat. There are people who are really into this question mark.
Oh, and I know. Think I got a friend, our friend Jamie, me and Bull and Jamie, when we wade into wrestling, he loves the question mark. Jamie does. Me and Bull just kind of shake our heads and say it figures, he was the one that thought that Rendon was actually going to end up with the Rangers. Me and Bull are just kind of going, come on, man. Like, nobody's coming to Texas that's in that caliber. It's just not happening.
Not right now.
Not with the way they treat their top players. But anyways, carry on.
So this one is probably it shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard, right? Like, the obvious answer should be Murdoch.
Yeah.
But the question mark is so over, and the man has been undefeated in that Georgia Broadcasting Studios. I'm gonna hate myself in the morning, but I'm gonna pick the question mark.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with one of those, we are not gonna have much of a finish type things. Sure. I think a lot of these matches are gonna end in clean finishes. They better, if they want to give the fans truly a good show. But I think this is going to be one of those where you're putting it out there to put on a flyer, but chances of there actually be of an actual ending happening there very slim. And it wouldn't surprise me if it somehow ties into the three-way match, and this could play into your prediction that turns into a scratch my back, scratch your back kind of situation that puts the national title on Aaron Stevens.
Right. That's great segue. Good job.
Okay, so next one we have, I'm going backwards. Sorry, my beautiful wife is coughing a little bit, and so it shows that she's not 100% perfect. But I don't believe, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I think she's faking just to make me feel better that I'm, you know. But anyway, so moving on to the women's match. So we've got and you know, I love, when I say love, like obviously I broke in with in many people's opinions the greatest pound for pound female wrestler, especially on the athletic side of things, to ever walk the planet in Jazz. So I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan of the women's movement. Me and my wife love watching you know, WWE, and so she's a big Shayna Baszler lover, hater.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of person. So we're big fans. I love women's wrestling, but and again, this is part of what I think the NWA needs to address in terms of their relevance. But you know, you've got you got 5 women in this match, and in reality, you only have one of them that I feel is actually top caliber talent. I have zero interest in Melina. I have very little interest in Ashley Vox or Allison Kay. I think Marty Bell looks like a good wrestler. I just haven't seen enough of her to really know. And I just think Thunder Rosa is on such a higher level in terms of what she can do in the ring, and just the interest in how interesting she is.
Right.
I just think they could have done better here. And again, you know, maybe I'm a homer. Maybe it's just because I love Jazz. But I mean, I think just a Thunder Rosa versus Jazz match in this slot would have been a much better delivered in what women's wrestling is today. Maybe this was a good match 5 or 6, 10 years ago, just given that, you know, there weren't that many great athlete women wrestlers out there. But right now, to me, this is an under par. It's under par. And just because of all the great women wrestlers that I could list off to you that are on the independents today, looking for this kind of exposure. And so I think putting Melina out there, I don't know what she's really doing for the show. And I don't know her personally. I hope, you know, I'm not trying to hurt her feelings or nothing, but I'm not pulling any punches either. I'm not a huge fan of Allison Kay. I know you guys on the show have been. I just haven't seen enough of her work to and what I have seen, I haven't really liked a whole lot of it. And again, maybe I'm comparing it to what I've seen of Thunder Rosa, who, again, the eyeball test for me is everything. When you watch the speed, the crispness, the ring positioning, believability, just all these things that I consider, you know, what makes a good worker, a good wrestler. I don't pull back with women because I know, having watched one of the best ones firsthand, that she was better than all of us. And so I'm not going to give them an excuse that, oh, well, we're women, so we're not going to be as good at athletes. No, I mean, you can't tell me that about Sasha Banks or Ronda Rousey or Charlotte Flair or Asuka, or the list goes on about, you know, the other women that are out there that I watch on a weekly basis. You just can't tell me that you can't do better. And again, I'm not trying to knock the ones that are there. Anybody that takes a bump, I give respect to. This is not about them. This is more about who's putting in the position. But in that, all that being said, all that smashing down, sorry, ladies, I'm going to have to go with to me, what's the most obvious is Melina's team, whoever that ends up being. It just seems like I don't even know anything about Allison Kay. I hardly know anything about Ashley Vox. They seem to be, as sad as this is, Allison being the champion, they just seem to be an afterthought in this match. It seems like an opportunity to kind of elevate one or all of the women on Melina's side.
And what if they did this to you? What if they swerved you and left Thunder Rosa off the match and made it Marty Bell and Melina versus Ashley Vox and Allison Kay?
Well, I mean, these are the same people that put the title on the Rock and Roll Express. So, you know, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of share some of the sentiment that you said. Obviously, I don't have a bump card. I never stepped in the ring. So I can't really speak to the, you know, what you see in the ring. I just see what I see. And, you know, there wasn't, like you said, a lot of crispness with some of the things that Ashley Vox versus Marty Bell early on in the show. I think if you got to see a little bit more of Allison Kay, I think you would enjoy her. But they haven't done a whole lot with her. And that's the problem with this episodic television, and the lack of 10 pounds of gold. they're focusing so much energy on the TV, which I think is important. Don't get me wrong, but that title doesn't just get defended in Atlanta. That title, I mean, just recently was defended in Alaska, and before that, back in Milwaukee against ODB. I'm not saying that these are, great, wonderful matches. I haven't seen them, but I think the fact that Allison Kay's in-ring work hasn't really been on display, I think hurts her character. And I think if we saw more of what she could do, that maybe people would have a different opinion of her. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe you nailed it. But I see this as a win for Melina's girls as well. I don't see how, it's kind of funny. The first episode, the first match Allison Kay had, I believe she defeated Ashley Vox, and it wasn't even close. And then they kind of told the story where Ashley's like, well, I just beat you, and Marty, you're not ready. And then Marty turns on Ashley, and then, she turns on Allison, and then Ashley comes to the rescue. And it's just, it's this weird dichotomy of like, you guys were friends before this thing all started. What happened? So, this match, you're right. I don't have a whole lot of interest in it. I don't think they did a good job of making me invested in this match. Now, hopefully it leads to something after the pay-per-view, because of course they'll be taping the next 2 nights of television right there in the studios. So hopefully the whatever positive thing happens on Saturday night carries on for Sunday and Monday, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
I had a little bit of a connection issue. So am I clear? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. This is something else too. I actually want to bring this up, and this is probably something that, and actually now we've covered all of our predictions, and let's make one last prediction. Stu Bennett. Do we have any involvement with Stu Bennett whatsoever? And also, we haven't got to the world title match.
Yeah,
wait a minute. Well, and again, that is kind of a segue. Do we think? I'll go ahead and riff on the world title match and tell you if I think Stu Bennett's going to be involved.
Okay.
So as far as the world title match, I think we are, honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the storytelling, because James Storm gets on my nerves. I don't really like him. I think Nick Aldis made an absolute fool of him on that show a couple of hours ago. Made him look stupid. I think James was legitimately upset. I just am not a big fan of his. And again, like, that doesn't mean that he's not any good. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, in person, we might be the best of friends for all I know. But as far as just his work, his in-ring stuff, I'm just not a big fan of it. It's just not my style. He's not very crisp in the ring. A lot of his moves are very vanilla. Not a lot of what he does is very matches up with who he always say, does your character and your in-ring style, do they go together? And it just doesn't. They don't go together for me. Carrying a beer out there, wearing a cowboy hat, and then going out there doing backcrackers and missile drop kicks and doing a bunch of Chris Jericho moves. And super kick for your finish. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And again, that's a big deal to me, because I really believe that it gives you credibility as a worker. Nick Aldis, everything he does kind of goes together. Granted, some of his in-ring work is a little sloppy. It's not crisp sometimes. I watched the match, obviously, from earlier. Having watched the match, if I were to break it down, it was a little below par for a world title match. But I do, there were some things that I could really look at and go, hey, guys, this is a world championship match. You are the focal point of a major company. You can do better. And that's just kind of how I felt about it. I thought the outcome was a little bit shaky. I'm really not sure. But all that being said, I don't know what the heck's going to happen in this match. And I think that's where we talked earlier about storytelling and how I feel like they've just done an excellent job of it. And it just feels like this thing runs so deep that I have no idea. I could see Tim Storm being a major player for either side. I could see him turning heel in this and totally going off on Nick Aldis. I could totally see him. I could see Nick Aldis turning heel and Tim Storm going with him. I could see, James Storm becoming the scapegoat of all of this and almost becoming like a kind of like a pawn to propagate this something new happening within the National Wrestling Alliance and within the top. And I think one of our guys earlier said there might be a chance of a four horsemen type clique forming here.
That
was that you?
That was me. As I'm pointing to myself on the camera. Yeah, and just to kind of jump in on what you're saying, and I'll let you finish.
But it's very intriguing. So sure, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here.
One of the things that now I'm a big Nick Aldis fan. Mm-hmm. He won me over early. I saw how he worked in China, working a crowd that obviously didn't know who he was, didn't speak the language, and was able to get over and get a standing ovation. Obviously, he's working with Colt Cabana, so it's not hard to have a good match. Mm-hmm. But, being able to work that crowd, being able to defend that world title on 4 different continents in a 1 calendar year, I think that's really, really impressive. There's never been another wrestler to have as many United Kingdom defenses as Nick Aldis. And I know, okay, well, he's British, no duh. But, yeah, he lives in America, though. He still was able to get that belt defended in the UK on a quite regular basis. And for a while there, he had more UK defenses than he had actual defenses in the United States. Yeah. With all that being said, there's so much confusion with his matches that he sets up. They're always so convoluted. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's because he's the smartest guy in the room and I'm just dumb, or if it's just unnecessarily complicated. When we go back to All In, initially, Aldis demanded that Cody bring the Ring of Honor World title and make it a title for title match. Well, Cody didn't win the title. He didn't have the Ring of Honor title for All In, and they still went ahead and with the match. When Aldis demanded a rematch, it had to be 2 out of 3 falls, the old school traditional way. And to make sure that Cody's wife would not get involved, he brought in Camille. Then later we get this challenge to Tim Storm while Aldis is world champion. He's the champion. He challenges Tim Storm. I'll defend my title against you, but only if you put your career on the line. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, not career, your opportunity to challenge for the world title. And then stepping in on behalf of Colt Cabana with James Storm. Okay, well, we're going to do the 6-man tag match. And if your team wins, you get a shot at me. But if you win, you have to give up your national title. It's just so convoluted, so many different options. Let's just have wrestling matches.
Yeah,
let's just do that.
I can go with that. But you know what? I want to have an irrational prediction. And then and then that one will be irrational. It won't be my hard line prediction.
Sure.
But then I'll give a real prediction.
Sure.
So what if? And again, what ifs are always fun. But what if what you say is true? What if you have your enforcer in Tim Storm? What if you have your tag team with the wild card? And what if, Camille is kind of, again, part of this whole situation? We all know she's boyfriend, girlfriend with, or I don't know if they're married or not, but we all know that she's in a relationship with Latimer. And so, and we've seen her interject herself into all these situations. And so it could feasibly be a situation where you could see, Nick Aldis is the heel in this storyline, is unlikable as James Storm is to me. He is in the role of the good guy. He's the baby face in this situation. And Nick Aldis, as I watched their match, he had no problems taking liberties and cheating.
Sure.
And so when he gets on a microphone and he acts like he's kind of above that sort of thing, and he's he acts like he's so much better. I actually think it's great. And I think that's what a true bad guy really thinks they're the good guy.
Right.
And, justifies what they do by saying, well, this is what had to be done. This was for the betterment of everybody.
Right.
Even though it was self-serving and malicious and tons of people got hurt by it, but it was better for everybody.
Now that's a great theory. Now I'm going to throw it on its head and say, what if everything you said is true, but instead of Nick Aldis being the guy, it's James Storm?
I just don't think James Storm can carry a team. I just don't. He just doesn't have I feel like Camille's setting him up. I feel like there's going to be she's going to get involved. There's just no doubt. I think Nick Aldis telling her to not come out is all the more likely that she's going to.
Right.
I think James Storm is being cast as being played for the fool, and he's going to end up coming out of this deal for the worse. And so, in my opinion, I think Aldis is going to win. How he's going to win, I don't have any clue. I know that Tim Storm's involvement is not going to be nothing, and I just think the tone is set for something major to happen that puts the onus on whoever the next challenger is to have such odds to overcome in beating Nick Aldis. And again, this is old school booking, that when he does win, it's going to mean something. When he does get that title for the first time, I don't know if it's his first time, but it's the first time that I can remember. If he does win the title on that grand stage against all the odds, I think it could be a situation where, it could be very, very fun to watch, very beneficial. And what Stu Bennett, there's two sides here. Is Stu Bennett just a throw in, or is he actually an integral part of this whole situation? What do you think? What's your thoughts on all this?
So I agree with you. Something complicated is going to happen. It has to. It wouldn't be Nick Aldis if it wasn't. And again, I'm a Nick Aldis apologist. I'm a fan. I think very highly of him. But I know something complicated is going to happen. There's too many moving pieces. There's too many different ways it can go. So I'll be honest. I don't even know if Aldis leaves as world champion. Mm-hmm. And in my heart, I say, of course, Aldis is going to win. In my head, I say, no, the odds are actually aligning for James Storm to win. And I think it's going to be with help from Camille. And I think it might be help from James Storm or Tim Storm as well. Gotcha. We mentioned before that Tim Storm isn't always been the nice guy that we've known him in the last 2 years. And he does have a mean streak in him. And, he can't challenge Aldis for the world title, but he could sure challenge James Storm for that title. At least that's what I think. And then to get to Stu Bennett, I don't think there is going to be a connection there. Mm-hmm. And I'm slightly educated on this because I did talk to David Lagana, and when he spoke to Stu Bennett weeks ago about joining the program, there was no interest in him doing anything wrestling-wise. He isn't a wrestler. He didn't want to be a wrestler. He's done with that. Now, that could be working the work, you know what I mean? This could all be part of some sort of game. But I just, they did have a vacancy. They needed someone to do color. He fits exactly what they were looking for, somebody who's knowledgeable, someone who is good on the mic. The fact that he's got ties to both Nick Aldis and Latimer and the whole English wrestling scene, I don't know if it lends credibility, but certainly doesn't hurt. And him and Joe Galley, I think, will be an interesting tandem. We'll see how it all plays out on Saturday. But I don't think he gets up from the announcer booth. I don't think he intervenes at all. I think he's just an announcer.
Well, just to kind of accent that, on Stu Bennett's Twitter, he says host, actor, and in parentheses, occasionally pro wrestler.
Oh,
so I guess we'll have to see what happens. But if this is one of those occasions, or if again he's out there just to help bring some attention to the National Wrestling Alliance, which if he is doing that, at whatever level, thanks. We appreciate it. It's great.
Absolutely.
And I want to say how you remember our buddy Stu Stone from
Absolutely
Championship Wrestling? Did you like Stu?
I love Stu.
Okay.
I think there is room for Stu Stone in this world, but I know Stu Stone is making movies.
Well, and I get that, and I guess I just I would love to see him
Yeah,
back in the NWA in any capacity, just because I love him, and I just
yeah,
want to take the time to say I did get to check out his Netflix movie,
yes,
and
yes.
being a huge baseball guy, both of us are big baseball guys.
Yep.
Being a '90s cards guy, and man, that was awesome.
I
That hit on so many nerves, on so many levels. I just, man, give him big props if you want to tag him in the deal, just to say that we gave a big shout out to him and the
maybe
movie.
I'll just
I loved it.
I'm gonna clip this part and we'll just put it up on Twitter and tag him in it.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a breath of fresh air, and I miss him. He's an awesome guy. Just one of those guys in life you're never gonna forget that you knew him.
And if you guys, if you don't know who Stu Stone is, he was an integral part of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He, for a brief time, managed the world's heavyweight champion Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. He was the head of the Family Stone, which was a mishmash of different wrestlers, all of whom also kind of led James Morgan for most of that time as well. Really fun, over the top personality. Started off working behind the scenes as an announcer, being in that studio environment, and I'm sure you saw it too. He'd actually help people cut their promos. We kind of produce them backstage. So he did a lot more than just what people saw on TV. And yeah, he's uber talented. If you guys care to see about him, it's on Netflix. It's a story about his life and baseball cards, two things that are very, very interesting. I definitely recommend it. But Champ, we're running out of time here. I'm looking at my clock, and we've been going for a while here.
Yeah, we're at the end. We got our predictions. We can figure out who got what, and it'll be a really interesting show. I did have one question, and I think this might be a relevant question for fans listening.
Yes.
So, in ordering the pay-per-view, and we probably should have covered this a little sooner, but
sure.
I've never ordered one of these, and I haven't ordered mine yet because I don't want to drop $20 and then not be able to watch it.
Right.
So if I want to watch the pay-per-view, I go to fighttv.com. Is that right?
It's fight.tv.
Fight.tv. Okay.
Yep.
I'm doing this right now as we speak. Okay. And so from here, do I purchase the NWA Into the Fire, and do I watch it from the website, or do I need to get an app? How does this go?
Well, what I did is I have the app downloaded on my phone.
Okay.
And I was able, like, they ask you to sign up for it. I was able to do so through Facebook.
Okay.
And then you sign in, and then you order it, the pay-per-view. You can watch it on your laptop. You can watch it on your cell phone, or a lot of people have the Roku, the streaming stuff. I believe there's a Fight channel on that as well that you could stream through your Roku. Or if you have like a Chromecast, you could stream it through your phone to the TV. But yeah,
it's not a monthly subscription. You just go on there, order what you want to see, and you get to play, and you can play it through whatever streaming device you have.
Correct.
That's super cool, because I'm looking on here and I see some other stuff that's kind of interesting. So that's really exciting.
And so our friends Dave Marquez, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, they're on Fight TV. If you want to follow Ring of Honor, they're also on Fight TV. Dave Marquez, the family of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, its sister promotion, Arizona, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, also airs on Fight TV. And then, of course, there's MMA fights. There's all kinds of other wrestling events. This isn't a paid endorsement for Fight, but it should be. Fight, if you're listening.
Yeah, that's right. We're on a podcast here, so definitely we wouldn't mind dropping the line for them if they want to donate $5,000.
I like your thinking, champ. I like your thinking. So that's going to do it for us for tonight. We will be talking about NWA's Into the Fire next Tuesday. And then also next Wednesday, we'll also be recapping the latest episode of NWA Power. And, stay tuned to the Alliance-Wrestling.com network of social media at the Alliance blog, and you'll see everything that we're doing. If you're on Instagram, we do Tuesdays with Jay, where I post the content that I film each day leading up to the live stream we do. That's before the NWA Power Show. We call it the pre-party because I know some of you like to do a little pre-party before you're wrestling. Then also we're on TikTok, where I'm uploading Q&As that you guys send me the questions and I answer them, and we do that on long form on a TikTok. Then of course we're still streaming videos to our Twitch channel, and of YouTube, of course, is the home of the Alliance Guys podcast, as well as all the other properties that you see here at Alliance-Wrestling.com. And we appreciate you guys tuning in and checking it out. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and when you see the end of this video, go over to Kevin Douglas's page, Kevin Douglas 24/7, and give that a thumbs up as well. And you can find out more about your world's junior heavyweight champion, the modern day hero, Mr. Kevin Douglas. Kevin, is there anything else I'm missing? What would you like to plug before we go?
Oh man, I just want to say congratulations on getting Rendon to the Angels, and enjoy another huge contract. Thanks for having me on. If you'd like to follow me on social media, it's just one word: Kevin Lee Frazier. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter. Right now, that's where I'm the most active. If you want to find me on Facebook, it's Kevin L. Frazier. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you, Jay, for having me on.
Absolutely. And guys, that'll do it for us tonight. We'll see you at the matches.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
You got it, man. That was fun.